When it comes to designing a data visualization, such as this bar chart, the work is very interesting and rewarding. In today's video, we are going to look at the 6 steps or design phases of a data visualization. First, we will take a quick look at all 6 phases, and then we'll look at each one in depth. Phase number 1 is understanding what's being requested. This is often referred to as understanding the requirements. In phase 2, we gather the right data to meet those requirements. And phase 3 is the fun part, building the data visualization, which then goes through a quality assurance, or QA, in phase 4. This phase is very important, and it's where the data is checked for accuracy and usability. In phase 5, we document everything. And finally, phase 6, delivering the data visualization to the customer. Now let's look at each of these steps in more detail. In phase 1, if you take the time to understand the purpose of the data visualization, it will save you a lot of time down the road. What, when, and why are all important to understand. What is the request? When is it needed? And what is its purpose? Suppose we work for a retail company that sells men's boots, and we are asked to create a chart showing for each quarter of last year how many boots by category were sold. Data requests often have 2 parts, the type of data and a specific time frame. It's important to know when the product is needed because how much time you have to work on it can help determine how complex a chart you are going to create. In addition to what, when, and why, it can also be helpful to know who the audience will be and where it will be published. So we're basically looking at the 5 W's when it comes to understanding the requirements. You won't always know all of this information, but if you do, it's a big help. Once we understand the requirements, it's time for phase 2, where we gather the data. Continuing with our example, the data that we need may be available in a spreadsheet, or if it's not, then it may be extracted from a database using a query language such as SQL or SQL. Also in phase 2, we then aggregate the data by the correct levels so that we can create our chart. In this case, the number of boots sold is aggregated by quarter and by the 3 categories of boots: hiking boots, work boots, and snow boots. Now that we have our data, we can advance to phase 3, building the data visualization. In this phase, we first choose an appropriate charting software. There are many to choose from, such as Tableau, Microsoft Excel, and Canva. The data is imported into the software of our choice, giving us lots of design options. It takes time to figure out the most effective way to visualize the data. The data from our example can be rendered as this bar chart using Microsoft Excel, which takes each category of boot and breaks down the number of boots sold by quarter. Another option for displaying the same data is to first break the data out by quarter and then by category. When deciding between 2 charts or how best to render the data, it's helpful to go back to the requirements that were determined in phase 1. In this example, it sounds like the chart showing the data by quarter first and then by category will work best. Once we have our chart, a large part of building a data visualization is applying design techniques to make it easier to understand and also just more visually appealing. For example, we could change the colors of the bars, and for hiking boots, green seems appropriate, and maybe brown for work boots, and a cool blue for snow boots. Then adding the actual number of boots sold above each bar, and a couple of more changes. It might be hard to see this, but adding a background behind the legend and printing the seasons that go with each quarter: winter, spring, summer, and fall. Once we're happy with the chart, it's time to check it carefully, which brings us to phase 4, quality assurance. This is a very important step. You do not want to skimp on the QA. It usually involves comparing the chart to the original data source to make sure it's correct. Also, asking a colleague to review it and see if they find any errors or have changes to suggest. Some improvements that might be suggested for our chart is to make the title more descriptive by adding the year and the total number of boots sold. Our data visualization now looks fabulous. We've now gone through the first 4 design phases of a data visualization. I've listed documenting everything in phase 5, but actually documenting your work is best done as you go along. When we take down the requirements in step 1, we can go ahead and assign a report number and type up the description. Having a separate computer folder for each project keeps things organized, with everything about the project stored in one place. With the data visualization created, checked, and documented, we are ready for the final phase, delivering the product to our customer. This might be one client, a large audience, or an even larger audience online. When the data visualization is delivered and the client has a chance to look at it, receiving positive feedback about your work is very satisfying. I find following these 6 steps helps me stay on track and results in an excellent final product. I hope this was helpful. If you enjoy learning about working with data, please consider subscribing to this channel. And if you want to see how I created this chart using Microsoft Excel, I made a separate video about that, and I'll put a link to it in the description.